One country managed to get 90% of its citizens into homeownership in just 40 years. Sounds impossible, right? Singapore didn't just pull it off, they became the gold standard that every other nation tries to copy when it comes to housing policy. But when you dig deeper into this so-called miracle system, you'll stumble upon a truth that'll catch you completely off guard. Back in 1960, Singapore had just gained independence and was staring down a housing nightmare. 80% of the population was crammed into rundown slums, disease was running rampant, and social unrest was brewing everywhere you looked. The government knew that if they didn't tackle this housing crisis head-on, this tiny island nation would completely fall apart. So they made a gutsy call. The government would step in directly and launch a massive public housing construction program. That's how the HID flat scheme was born. But that's just where the story gets started. Within a few short decades, Singapore had built over 1 million HID flats, solving housing needs for pretty much everyone. These units cost less than half the price of private market housing, yet the quality didn't suffer one bit. The government even let people use their retirement savings to buy these homes, turning regular working folks into property owners. The whole world was blown away by this housing miracle. But behind all that success was hiding a much more complex blueprint. The moment the government started calling the shots on who gets to live where, housing stopped being just about having a roof over your head. Getting approved for an HID flat meant jumping through all kinds of hoops: age requirements, income limits, marital status checks, and even strict racial quotas. The government dressed it up as a racial harmony policy, but what they really created was a sophisticated social management machine. Where you lived started determining your social standing, and your home became a status symbol. While HID flats solved the housing shortage, they accidentally created a whole new social hierarchy. Different types of flats carried different social weight, from 1-bedroom units all the way up to 5-bedroom ones, each level representing a different tier of wealth and status. What's even more subtle, how the government was actually pulling the strings on social structure and population movement through housing allocation. This system was starting to show its true colors. Singapore's housing policy operates as both a welfare program and a control mechanism. Through housing policy, the government hit multiple targets at once. They didn't just solve the housing shortage, they used racial quotas to keep social stability in check, influenced family structures through eligibility requirements, and even controlled population movement through resale restrictions. This wasn't just housing policy, it was a complete social engineering project. When housing gets tied to identity, you start seeing some pretty unexpected consequences. Young people found that living independently became incredibly tough because HID applications required you to be either married or over 35. Single folks were forced to either delay moving out or get pushed into the expensive private market. What was meant to be a well-intentioned policy ended up restricting personal freedom of choice to some degree. Early HID buyers made out like bandits as property values shot up over time. But the people coming after them faced higher and higher barriers and longer wait times. The same policy produced completely different outcomes depending on when you entered the system, and it actually made wealth gaps between generations even worse. The policy's success became the source of brand new problems. When you really analyze it, Singapore's housing policy is actually an ingenious social control system. Through housing allocation, the government can influence people's living choices, career planning, and even lifestyle decisions. This kind of soft control works way better than any heavy-handed approach because people willingly accept these constraints in exchange for housing security. When other countries try to copy the Singapore model, they usually only see the surface level success while missing the underlying conditions that make it work. Singapore's success is built on strong government authority, massive financial resources, and a highly centralized decision-making system. Most importantly, it requires citizens to have absolute trust in their government. Not every country has these ingredients. The real genius of Singapore's housing model is how it uses the solution to one problem to simultaneously tackle multiple deeper social issues. Housing policy isn't just housing policy, it's population policy, economic policy, and even political policy, all rolled into one. That's what makes it a true policy within a policy. When we marvel at Singapore's housing miracle, maybe we should be asking ourselves, what price are we willing to pay for housing security? Where exactly is the line between well-meaning government intervention and social control? The answer to that question might be worth thinking about even more than the housing itself.